Welcome to DSI Live. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm your host, Vanessa Emerson, founder of Dental Speaker Institute, and I'm here today with Reese Harper. Hey, Reese.
Hey, Vanessa. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too. I really do dig that headset you got going there.
I said it's my broadcast journalist headset on. I mean business.
That's right. Well, it works really well. We hear you well. Thanks so much for being here today, and thank you all for watching and tuning in with us via Facebook Live. Now, if you are here, please do join us by saying hello to Reese, typing in the comments, and we'll call out your name and say, hey, welcome. All right. So, Reese Harper is a popular speaker at dental events, and he's also host of the Dentist Money Show, which is a popular podcast. He is a dental finance thought leader with a master's in finance, and he's also a certified financial planner. Reese designed a powerful service platform called Elements. In fact, we can see it behind his head there, and it's used. Yeah, there it is. Looks like a table of elements. And it's used by dentist advisors to help dentists across the country plan, invest, and retire better. So I've invited Reese today to talk to our Dental Speaker Institute group, which is primarily speakers and consultants. You know, many are clinicians. We got some meeting planners here. But I feel like, and I believe you would agree with me, Reese, that this is a topic of investing and retirement and the planning around finances. This is a topic that was of vital importance, I would say, to any practice owner and dentist. And as our DSI members are out there consulting and working with practices every day, I just wanted to be able to bring more resources to them, more tools, help share some tips with them to be able to help them be able to be the hero that brings back solutions to the practices they work with. So Thank you so much for being here to help.
Yeah, thanks, Vanessa. I think we'll be able to. I've had a lot of experience with dentists since 2007 when I started my business, and I've learned a lot of things the hard way, and I've learned some things through dumb luck. But for whatever reason, we have dentists all over the country that continue to look to us for some advice and some help. And I think I've learned a lot of things that can help people know how to address personal finance in a way that doesn't feel intimidating. It helps. One of the reasons people appreciate learning about personal finance better is a lot of times it's a source of relationship tension.
Yeah, sure.
And knowing how to navigate money a little bit in a healthier way as a business owner, as a dentist, and even as a consultant, and anybody, it really does help your life feel a lot better and helps your relationships flow a lot better. And so hopefully we can share some ideas today that help everybody in a lot of different arenas.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. That's exactly what we're hoping for. So Reese, get us started off by just giving us a little idea of how did you get into this, working in this arena, but also in working with dentists. Can you just walk us through that?
Yeah, I mean, when I started going to college, my emphasis that I wanted to pursue was some form of teaching. I was looking at psychology. I was looking at English. I studied some theology. I really just enjoy teaching because teaching has a huge impact on someone else. I love sitting down with somebody, hearing their story, hearing the intricacies of what has made their life special and unique, and then finding a tip, an idea, or something that I can give them that helps them maybe get over a hurdle or get to a new level of success. And there's a lot of ways to do that and a lot of disciplines to do that in. And I guess I came across personal finance when I was in college, and I had an internship at a large financial planning firm, and I just started seeing how big of an impact money has on people's lives and the way they think. And the way they interact with other people and the happiness that they have in their own lives. And so I started studying that. I kind of got I got a finance bug in me, which was strange because I never really anticipated that was going to be my passion. And one thing led to another, and I ended up getting a lot of professional credentials and a master's degree. all in finance, and getting into dentistry was kind of a little bit different process. And I, in 2007, I started my own business after having worked at a larger financial planning firm for a while. And I started with not a focused niche market of dentists. I was working with general business owners for a few years, and I had a few dentists as clients, and I had some construction company owners and some doctors and a few attorneys and accountants. And what I found was that every time I would meet with the dentist, they had very, very little time to meet. So at best, they would have like a 45-minute like lunch break, that they could get in and out. They were like bringing a sandwich with them half the time and like trying to like scarf it and ask me as many, but they had a lot of questions too. They were like, they had so many questions that they wanted to get answers to. And it was really hard for them to be able to get answers in such a short period of time. And they just didn't have more time than that. And then after their busy production schedule, they would head home and they would have a whole evening full of activities with family, kids, service projects. I mean, they're really uniquely busy people. A lot of the other business owners had a little bit more time. Like because their schedule wasn't driven by production or appointments, and every dentist is like, they're just trying to get as much production as they can into each day. It just resulted in very little time. And a dentist has a lot more financial questions than the average person, mostly because they have a more complicated personal financial situation as well. They've got the way we look at complication. If you wanted to grade someone, every human and their financial complexity, if you wanted to give them a grade, of complexity, let's say 100 is the most complex and 0 is the least complex. What makes someone complicated is the number of things they have to keep track of in their financial life. So the number of debts, the number of properties, the number of businesses, the number of entities, the number of income streams, the number of expenses, just on their income statement and financial statements, just the number of things they have to keep track of. The second thing is the higher someone's income becomes and the higher their net worth becomes, the more complicated their situation is as well. And dentists are in a particularly unique circumstance where they have very little time, but a very complex situation compared to the average person. And that just results in a really good fit for someone like Dentist Advisors, our business, to come in and just say, hey, let us take some of this stuff off your plate. And so that's why we picked dentists. They're just really complicated and they had very little time. And then they didn't have a lot of background. And so this was just an area where most dentists were just happy to say, you know what, you guys are a little bit more specialized than I am at this. You take it off my plate and I'm going to go and focus on marketing, production, adding an associate, expanding to another location. And so that's kind of the background.
Awesome. So that was what I think I heard you say that was 12 years ago, back in 2007. And so you've been doing this for a while and working with a lot of dentists and doing some speaking and consulting around the country too. Can you tell us, what are some of the myths you see out there that maybe you could do a little debunking? What do you think is like the most popular myth in this area?
Well, I'm really actually big into myths. Myths are an interesting topic for me. There's a lot of myths in money, but there's myths in dentistry. There's myths in consulting, right? And you discover a lot of these with your guests on your show. And in finance, a lot of the myths are really dependent on the time you were born. The age in which you were born dictates a lot of the financial messages that you receive from your parents or from the news. And one of the big kind of things that right now, this generation that's really very popular is kind of an abhorrence of debt. And almost like in some really conservative circles, debt is almost akin to like doing something wrong, like breaking a law, or like if you have debt, you're looked at in a way that kind of looks like out of control or looks like you're not responsible, right? And good people would pay off all their debt faster. And so there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
guilt and shame around debt. And I think that's pretty unhealthy in a world where it's very difficult in today's economy to operate without debt. It's difficult to be a student that
Yeah.
gets through school without debt, and it's very difficult to be a business owner that gets a healthy business off the ground without debt. And that's partially because debt is such a big part of our government's balance sheet now. It's a big part of our corporate infrastructure. Our country is a much bigger economy now because we have the utility or the cash flow or the liquidity that debt gives us. The more debt you have in an economy, it isn't always a bad thing. But a lot of dentists, because of that messaging, they really aggressively try to tackle their debt very quickly. And one of the big myths that someone like Dave Ramsey I think he's a good financial influence for many people, but his audience tends to be more of the average American. But a lot of dentists tune into messages like that about debt. They'll aggressively pay down their debt at the expense of things like investing in consulting or investing in marketing or hiring an associate or building cash in the business for an emergency or buying a new piece of equipment. So there's this tension that they feel that's almost like, if I get rid of my student loans and I get rid of my practice debt and I get rid of my real estate debt, then I'll have all this money left over. So then I'll be able to just be fine. And what it really results in is kind of a volatile movement from, instead of kind of a nice balanced approach of paying off debt and investing and growing your practice and growing your income. What ends up happening is people kind of pay off debt at the expense of all the other stuff. And then once their debt's gone, then they start doing the other things. And it doesn't result in as fast of an overall net worth growth or personal wealth growth, or your financial situation is just less stable during the period that you're aggressively paying down your debt. So I don't think I would want to deter people from, I'd way rather see people pay off debt than go, consume more than they need to, like overspend and buy a boat and a timeshare and then the money disappeared anyway. Right. But I do think there's a better way than just attacking your debt really aggressively. And it just results in a better work-life balance, a better relationship with a spouse and family, less stress on your cash. And you can take a vacation and relax. You can watch your retirement grow and know you're going to be secure in the future. You can invest in equipment and marketing and consulting the right way. And so that's probably myth number one. I don't know if that resonates with you, but you probably have some insight into that too, just as someone who's had to navigate feeling what debt feels like,
Right, all of us, right? And you said the word that I kept thinking was balance. So what I hear you saying is it's about having finding a good balance, and it made me think about my journey as an entrepreneur. That I was able to grow my business so much more rapidly when I started working with coaches, when I started getting outside eyes on my business. And I think that's what you're talking about. What you do for dentists around finances, what so many of our consultants that would be listening in do in many other ways with the practice and or wherever their topic of expertise is. But when you get someone with outside eyes looking at your financial life or your business, be able to bring their outside knowledge in, that's where it can help us make decisions that otherwise that I think I can only do as well as I can do my business based on my knowledge. And it's so important to get that outside input to help me find the right balance so that I can then grow more rapidly. And in this case, ultimately grow the business while getting rid of the debt. That was awesome. That was really an important myth, and one I hadn't thought of that way. But you're right. People really do abhor it. And it feels like it's a status symbol to be out of debt.
Yeah.
And a different kind of status symbol to be.
Yeah, I think it's like a lot of things in life. The more you learn about something that's really scary, sometimes the more at peace you become with it and you become more responsible. You can deal with it better. Debt really does have a negative side effect if it's abused and overused and it's imbalanced. And it also, the absence of debt If you take all debt away, that's not necessarily a healthy financial statement. I have a lot of clients who take a lot of pride in having no debt, but that may not actually be the best thing to grow their wealth. And so it's a balance of knowing when to use it and when not to, and just not being so scared of using it properly that you carry anxiety or stress around it.
Yeah. Something that applies to all of us.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So that's a common myth that is now debunked.
Yeah.
So let's jump into the what's in it for me portion of this for our colleagues that are listening in, those who speak and consult in the same arena we're in, or we're all speak on different topics. So as we try to think now, how can we as speakers and consultants, what advice would you give us for working with the dentists that we work with across the country? How can we help connect them? What tools or resources are available to help them connect to being able to plan, invest, and ultimately retire better?
Well, I think it's kind of financial stuff is not always a topic that is easy to share and talk about. It's kind of intimidating, and most people are a little uncomfortable sharing financial advice with other people, especially in a public forum. But I really think it sets you apart as a speaker or as a consultant when you can have the confidence to say, this is something that I actually think is a good resource, and it's on finance. And if it is a good resource, it can make you look really good. And because it's really hard to find good financial information. I mean, I've had so many people call and tell me, your podcast has been it's been irreplaceable, in my morning routine when I'm driving to the office on Wednesdays. Like I really have learned so much about money, and it feels like you're really educating me. And I've had a lot of, I just feel like that the right type of content is probably a really important thing to share with people. So one of the things I would probably encourage people to do is build a small repertoire of things that you've found helpful. First, experience them yourself and get a sense for whether you like the tone, the messaging, the information. We have like our kind of main resource, which I mentioned, is our podcast. If you go to dentistadvisors.com/listen, you can just subscribe there for free. And we handle our editorial calendar on our podcast in a really serious way. So we're actually actively, I'm doing both anecdotal surveys and interviews, and we're trying to do regular formal analysis of our content to determine what is it that dentists really need to hear. So when we do an episode, it's because there's a strong demand for that topic. It's not because we think it might make sense.
Yeah.
And if you look at a lot of our most recent shows, you'll see that we have a really good education topic coming up recently about how to teach your kids about money and the power of what type of vehicles are available and how to distinguish between the right way to save money for certain ways for your kids. Then we've got another one on the last week's episode was called "The Rise of Machines," and it's about the way that all financial planning is right now. There's so much happening with technology, and what's the right way to use technology, and what's the right way to use a human, and do humans get replaced by technology? Do humans lose their jobs to technology? Like, where is this going when it comes to financial planning and consulting and services more broadly? We have another episode about buying a house versus growing your practice. That was 2 weeks ago. So how do I know when it's time to put all the money into the house and kind of live a lifestyle that I enjoy versus put it back into the business? And that's a really hard discussion that all of us have at least once or twice in our life, is now the time to enjoy it, or do I need to continue to wait? These topics are just really the ones that dentists struggle with the most. We interview guests. We have our own monologues and our own editorial conversations. And I think that's probably one thing that could really help this audience, is trying to just become more familiar with the actual things dentists are stressing about, right? These
Yeah.
are the things, these topics, these episodes, they're the things that dentists probably, they keep them up at night, that bother them, that make them worry. And being more familiar with the financial issues, having a vocabulary about how to talk about money and think about money in a way that feels real to your audience, man, it just makes you come across as such a more effective leader. You know the buzzwords, you know the lingo, you know the pain points they're struggling with. It's funny because we probably, I was just measuring the other day, we probably have as many consultants and coaches listening to our show as we do dentists.
Oh,
And
that's awesome.
yeah, and a lot of them are financial advisors around the country. So we have a lot
Mm.
of financial advisors in other firms, right, that work with dentists that tune into our show and ask lots of questions just to be able to know how to interact with their dentists a little bit better. And so anyway, that's one good resource.
Well, can I just piggyback on that and say, I think you guys have a really awesome podcast. I think there's just, it's fun. It feels different. It feels unique. I mean, not like it's light and all entertainment, but I mean, because you definitely continually bring, it feels like you have your finger on the pulse, right? And you're seeing what people are having challenges around. You're bringing that information, as you were saying. But I like that you couch that in a real, is that the right word, couch, but like present it in a way that is contemporary and fun and current. And
yeah, hopefully not too intimidating, right? It's accessible. That's what we talk about. We want to make this accessible to
easy
people.
to listen to.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's typically not. This stuff is not fun stuff sometimes. It can be boring. It can be intimidating. So we try to bring lots of interesting stories into the mix and make it really applicable. I think it just starts with understanding the dentist and the needs that they have, and then really doing good research on a topic. So
right. And I think another thing from my point of view, when we choose to speak and consult, we choose our topic.
Yeah.
For instance, Reese, you're not teaching dental implants or OSHA or phone skills, right? You're teaching what you know. It's the same reason I hire a plumber to put in a garbage disposal.
Yeah.
Because it's hard. It's, like I'd have to learn so much; it would take forever. But I think that's where I think it's important for us to know who of our colleagues offer services that are a good complement to what we offer, so that it's another tool in our tool belt. So that as we're working with dentists and we see a situation where someone could use some help, it's always great to be able to co-refer and to be able to build those kind of partnerships, that sort of thing.
I totally agree. And we found that in our business in particular, because we have our own expertise, but it kind of bleeds over into so many other areas, we've had to develop our own partnership program with people like you, Vanessa, where we can say, we know where to send you for anything that you're struggling with. And that it's so good to have that recommendation actually be taken care of. And people value that. I mean, they value it so much, because it's funny in a world like today where, like, when I want to go buy a car, today's probably the most likely time where I could go to the internet and find a vehicle, right? But last week I had to buy a new car, and it was funny, even with how tech savvy I am and how much time I spend on the internet. The first thing I wanted to do, because I thought I wanted this truck, I want to buy a new truck that had security cameras around it so that I was safer when I was in my driveway with all my kids. And so I thought, I'm gonna have to do all this work, like 360 cameras, and like, which trucks have it? Does a Dodge have it? Does a Chevy have it? Does a Ford have it? Is it going to be in the Honda Ridgeline? Is it going to be in the Nissan? And I'm just like, in my head, I'm just going, holy cow, like, there's so much work and research to do here.
Yeah.
I'm just going to call Jason. And one of my neighbors is, he's like a general manager at a big dealership that has a lot of different car brands. I thought I'll just call him. And it was amazing. Like, one phone call saved me like 8 hours of research, right? Or 10 hours of research. He just pointed me in the right direction, and within like 2 hours, I had a truck shipped to my house. It was like all done. I ended up getting the Ford Raptor, which is a Ford kind of off-roading truck, but it has all these nice security cameras around the outside and sensors to protect me from but bumping into something. So
Right.
anyway,
Things are constantly changing, right? Like you don't know. I mean, every year it's a different truck. Like by the way,
this
I have
year, this is what I got, but in 2 years, I may not get that truck. Yeah.
right. And that's where what a great point, because you want to tap into somebody who keeps their finger on that pulse, which by the way, I bought the Ridgeline.
Nice, dude. I love the Ridgeline. That thing drives so smooth.
Yeah, it's pretty
So smooth. Yeah. Well, it has like a car body, so it's
totally.
it's just really nice.
Like an Accord.
Anyway,
Congratulations on the truck. That's exciting.
Yeah. So my point was, like, our financial advisors have, like, it's really an important part of why our clients like working with us is if you say which bank deals best with this type of loan, or which consultant can help me dig out of this problem.
Yeah.
Or, how do I get to become a better speaker? Or, right. It's like, there's all these questions floating around, and I know right away, like, this is your resource. And I think it's, if you don't have actual recommendations, a lot of people are like, I can give you 5 names and you could pick, you see what you like. What they really want is they want you to tell them which one to pick. And sometimes that's not possible in some circumstances. Sometimes it's nice to give out a couple, but they don't want an unopinionated list. They want your experience and your opinion. And the stronger you are at developing an opinion around outside referral sources, the more trusted an advisor you become to your consulting client. And people that kind of live in that halfway land of like, well, there's a lot of great people out there and you could work with any number of people. What do you like? So they don't want to hear that. They want to hear, what has been your experience, Reese? Yeah. You tell me how to save me some time and tell me where to go. So anyway, that's important. I think as a consultant, man, it is so critical.
I think you're right. And that's funny because that's like the second conversation today that it came back to those very same points of just somebody wants you to actually make that referral. Now, we live in this day and age of Google reviews and testimonials, and it's everywhere, Yelp and all that. If I don't know anything about dentist advisors and I'm wanting to try to figure out, like, does anybody else think they're any good?
Totally.
How where do we go for that? Do we I'm like throwing this out.
This is great. And this is probably one of the biggest challenges that I face as a business owner in my space is when there's 2 types of financial planners in the country. One of the, we'll say these are really broad brushstrokes, but there's also hybrid in the middle of these 2 extremes. But one extreme is someone who sells financial products. Like, if I sell you a mutual fund, I get a commission. I sell you a life insurance policy, I get a commission. That's called a commission-based financial advisor or a commission-based broker. On the other extreme, you have what's called a fee-only fiduciary. And a fiduciary is what I am and what my firm is. And what that is a model where the only way we can get money is if the client gives us money. So we can only get paid from the client directly. We can't get paid from any product, no life insurance, no mutual funds, no annuities. We only get paid from the client, and then we buy products at wholesale. So we go get things for you from Costco, and then we charge you to go to Costco to get them. And so that's kind of the 2 models. Now, the commission-based model, there is no regulation or there is not the same amount of regulation in that world. So you could be a life insurance agent, for example, and you can be regulated very differently, where you could use testimonials, or you can use public review sites, but when you're a fiduciary, which is the highest standard of regulation, the highest standard of consumer protection, the SEC has decided that they do not want to have any testimonials being publicly delivered in any format.
Oh, wow.
And so if I have someone that leaves me a review on LinkedIn, for example, like he's awesome, I have to take it down. So like right now, there's so much regulation on the fee-only fiduciary model. What they're worried about is they want to maintain the integrity of this fee-only kind of profession. And they're worried that people will over leverage testimonials to create a feeling of, you know, I personally feel like they should just not have their hands in it, because consumers are smart enough to know the difference between a good referral and a good, review. But that's my opinion, is that they've over-regulated it. But I get where they're coming from.
Mouth now, then at that point it's probably more word of mouth and that sort of thing. Like
it's really tough. To get to know us, we just recommend go read an article that we wrote in Dental Economics. Go read something we wrote in Dentistry IQ. We have to create so much content because we can't really use testimonials or review sites or anything of that nature. We just have to pump out a ton of credible information, and then
because that really serves you well.
And then our clients can share that information, which happens all the time. Like we can't, they're not regulated to not share stuff. So our podcast gets downloaded, tens of thousands of times every episode, and we get a lot of people sharing it. And so if we put out really good information and we are around for a long time and we have, a close to 100% retention rate on our clientele, then eventually, it starts to snowball. And that's kind of where we're at now. But anyway, awesome. I brought that up because it's actually been a source of frustration for me over the last 12 years. I'm just like, I can't even put one testimonial out there, like nothing. Anyway.
Well, it feels to me like the best testimonial anyway is like a referral, when someone's worked with you and then they refer one of their colleagues, someone they know. That's really ultimately the best anyway.
It is.
I've put your email address up here, Reese. I hope you don't mind. Reese at dentisadvisors.com. And I'm sure that people, if anybody has questions about like how it works to work with you and like more about the elements or some of the other things you offer, I'm sure they could reach out to you to maybe schedule a demo or something and find out how that all works.
Totally.
I'd love to ask you a little bit more. Now, as one of our colleagues who also speaks and consults, I'd love to ask you a little bit about your journey as a speaker.
Yeah. Oh, this has been an interesting one. What specifically would you be interested in that?
Well, first of all, I got to tell you, I totally forgot about this till we started talking today, and I hope you don't mind me mentioning this.
Yeah.
But years ago, the way I was referred to you was our friend Doug Carlson, Dr. Doug Carlson from Colorado.
I know Doug really
well. He wrote to me and he said, "You've got to meet Reese." He said he is one of the sharpest guys out there in this area of financial planning. And so
nice.
He's awesome and he's brilliant, and I just wanted to share that because I had I'd forgotten about that till just now.
Power of a referral.
Yeah, power of referral, and I know that I've just heard nothing but great things about Dentist Advisors. But let me ask you about your journey as a speaker. So, is there anything that you wish you would have known when you started speaking and consulting that you know now that you could share with some of our colleagues that might be early in their journey? Is there something you wish you would have known?
There's probably a few things that are things that would have been good to know. One of them, that comes to mind is that certain audiences at certain venues are going to resonate better with your message than others. I think that not all speaking opportunities are ones you should be targeting.
Yeah.
Right. And you should get to know what type of speaking opportunity will be the best for you. In my particular case, I can share my own story, and that may or may not have relevance to everybody. But in my particular experience, my first year, I ended up speaking at a lot of big national conferences. So I had a main stage, presentation at Yankee. I was at the New York Dental Society's annual meeting and had a great main stage presentation there. I had a lot of really great national speaking slots at big conventions. And what I learned from that was that in my particular message, and this may not be everyone's case, right? I mean, I was so happy to get to have that opportunity and still look back at it with really fond memories. But since that point have shifted my speaking strategy quite a bit. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that my audience they're either there to listen to my message or they're there to get CE in a lot of cases. And if they're there to get CE for me, that, for me, success wasn't just getting paid a speaking fee. To me, I wanted to make sure that it resulted in people joining our podcast or coming to our Facebook group, or potentially, learning more about our service and then becoming a customer. And, but I enjoy speaking just for CE's sake where I can. Sometimes an honorarium is just tough to pass up, and sometimes it's just fun to go somewhere. But I found a particular type of audience, a way to get an audience that I never really thought would be. I mean, for other people, this may not work at all, but like, I found that by me just being very explicit about what I was going to talk about and marketing directly through Facebook, a speaking ad about a venue, and marketing my own event, I got massive success from that self-promotion. And I wasn't expecting people to want to come on a Thursday night at 7:00 to listen to a finance presentation. But the people that would show up when I marketed directly wanted to be there, right? They really wanted to be there. And if I was in a speaking slot, let's say at Yankee, maybe some people really did want to hear from me, but a lot of them were just there because that was the track they picked, or that was the venue that they
needed to be somewhere.
Yeah, they needed to be somewhere. and I was just as good as the next option.
I've seen that before too.
Yeah, and so I don't want to say there's a right or wrong way, but for me, it was surprising that when I started testing my own, marketing my own event, and I don't think I could have done this without having first built an audience, right? Our podcast audience was obviously a huge part in being able to say, hey, we're going to be in Milwaukee, or this week. For consultants out there who have more, we're not a huge firm, but I'm not the only one that is trying to speak nowadays. And it was interesting. Just this week, we posted an ad for an event we're doing in Scottsdale, down in your neck of the woods, I think in a couple of weeks. And I'm not even speaking, but the message of the ad is so strong that we've already got, I think it's all booked now. I don't know if it's all the way booked or there's a couple slots left, but it was only 3 days of advertising to get almost 50 people there. And I was just really surprised that sometimes this may not apply to every one of your audience members, but being direct, being explicit about what you have to offer, charging for it, and putting yourself out there in a direct way. Probably once you have an audience, I would say once you have you've got to be building an audience somehow, through an email list, through a podcast, through a YouTube channel, through a Facebook post, even social media posts create an audience. Once you have an audience, don't be afraid to try to, pick a city that could work and get your message out there in a strong way. And for people who are just looking to do CE presentations and collect on honorarium, that may not be worth their time. But for a lot of people who have additional services to offer to the market, man, I was just really surprised, and I waited way too long to try that. I mean, I was waiting for 5 years to try it because I kind of thought it's going to just be, that's not a big enough marketing audience, or not enough big enough network. I don't have the audience to attract people. But I think your message, if it's well crafted, can sometimes break through the noise.
Reese, I love that that's what the advice you gave. I mean, because we didn't queue this up, right? We didn't chat about this ahead of time. So I'm sitting here going, oh, I'm so excited. I want to piggyback on the back of this.
Yeah.
Because I do the same thing, and I learned this from Mark LeBlanc, and he calls it a showcase. Now, I don't know if yours is a no or low fee. Mine's a no fee showcase that I offer.
Yeah.
And I would much rather have 8 people who really want to be there than 200 that are just coming because it's CE, because I'll spin off 5 figures in income off 8 people that really wanted to be there. And the 200 people, maybe you get something, maybe you won't. And it's not just me. I mean, I've seen this. And I mean, here's the bottom line. We're all speakers.
Yeah.
And the reason we speak is it's marketing because we want to sell services. So, I mean, let's just talk frankly. I think one of the best ways to be able to grow your business is through these, what Mark would call a showcase. So I borrowed that title from him, and he encourages we do something like that at least monthly.
Yeah. I think it's great. It's great.
Yeah. We're getting ready to do one in your neck of the woods, right? Because you're in Utah.
Yeah.
So in September, and you're hearing it first here, folks. We haven't rolled this out yet. We're getting ready to in a couple days. But Manal, Sampat, and Vicki Peterson and I are going to do a full day for speakers and consultants, a no fee. But you need to be 100%
I was just
committed.
talking to Vicki about this yesterday, and I got a little bit. She didn't know the details. She probably still doesn't. Maybe you're still working through them. But man, she was like, "I think we got something special coming up." I was like,
yeah.
"Oh, you and Vanessa, that's and Manal. I didn't know Manal was there too. So that's a pretty powerhouse trio.
It's going to be fun. We're going up there for the Dental Intel Summit, so we're going to do it just a couple days before. And that's part of the magic of what you're talking about here. If you're going to be in a city already traveling to do something, the idea would be to do your showcase while you're there. So I don't mean to belabor that, but I love that you shared that as one of the things you wish you had known. Me too.
Oh, thanks.
Are there one more question about your speaking, then we're getting close to time to need to wrap this up. Are there any resources that really helped you on your journey as a speaker? Is there anything there you want to share?
Honestly, I think the thing that helped me the most was something people might not expect, but writing actually helped me more than I ever thought with my speaking. And what I mean by that is I kind of have set religiously Tuesdays and Thursdays to be my content production days. And I don't always get the whole day, but I always prioritize them at the first part of the day. Usually I get 3 hours a day on a Tuesday and a Thursday where I'm dedicating time to new content production. And what I mean by that is I'm just sitting down and writing copy. I'm sitting down and writing what's on the top of my mind based on conversations I had the previous week, something that caught my attention, something in the news, something that a dentist mentioned. And the more time I spend writing, the more I master my subject matter and dial in like what it is that I'm going to be all about and say and do and not say. And it's helped me develop, dozens of presentations. And it's also just, I think when you have to our writing voice and our talking voice are never really the same when we start. When we start out as speakers or writers or content producers, our writing voice and our speaking voice, they don't really sound the same. Our writing voice sometimes, for most writers, will sound more formal. It'll sound a little stuffy. It's not the way you would talk to someone. But as time passes, they never really quite be exactly the same because it's difficult. But your writing voice starts to become more like your speaking voice. You start to be more comfortable with who you are and the way you want to say things and the way you want to present information, your style, And I found myself struggling a lot. I'm not the funniest person, but I when I talk, I have a sense of humor that people who know me know. I'm not like my podcast listeners and people like you. I'm not like an overly stuffy, serious person. And I in my writing, a lot of times it would come across too stuffy. Or when I tried to interject humor, it would be like, that's weird. Like, why are you, it's like, that's too funny, dude. Or that's not really you. Like, you're going off on some weird tangent here. And I think what ends up happening over time is like, writing actually helps you find your speaking voice in a way that's super authentic. And if you're struggling to find your comfort level as a speaker, I recommend writing a lot because it really does. It gets you confident with the ideas that you want to share. And I think you can't write enough as you're developing your philosophy. At some point down the road, you probably have written quite a bit of what you want to say, but a lot of people don't take the time to write down their ideas. I think it can help their speaking career a lot.
That is super great advice. Love it. It makes total sense. And I love that you get that much time every week. Reese, have you written a book?
It's close. It's close, but the thing you'll find out about writers like me, I'm not the best writer by any means, but what I really have is, probably like most people who can most writers will be able to relate to me on this. I have about 10 books that are 3/4 of the way done.
I know.
And you get writing and you're almost done and you're like, well, I kind of want to write about this now. And so, yeah, I have a book that we're about wrapped up, but I've started and pushed a book about 3/4 of the way through.
Yeah.
I've got one for financial planners that I'm writing about how to give advice. I've got one for dentists about how to think about their money and their marriage and their relationships. I have one on the elements system of financial planning, which is kind of the way we've come up with our software platform.
Uh-huh.
And then it's like, they're not the same book, and you can't cram all the stories together. So at some point I'll have worked for 5 years to write a couple books, and I'll get them done. I'll kind of have to, it won't be as hard at the end because I'll have spent all the time doing multiple write-ups.
You speak to my pain because I get it, and it took me multiple tries, but I finally did. Oh, here goes Winter.
Hey, Winter, good to see you. And I don't say that because I think I'm some fancy writer, but I do say that because it's interesting to see how could you not have one book, but you could have almost 4? Or
well, I totally get it, Reese, because I mean, for years I kept thinking there's this book inside me, and I got like over 100 pages written on the last try, and then I was like, oh my gosh, it'll take me 400 pages to say everything I want. So because it was too big.
Yeah.
So what occurred to me earlier this year is I'm making it too hard. So
just got to get it out there. Yes.
My little book. This is one little piece of it, how to get started. And
awesome.
I just recently got it done, and I hired people to help me.
Yeah, that's great. Good for you.
Yeah. But you got it. You were right there on it. I know you are with as much as you put out there, but it's not like you have to have it either. I mean, it's a good thing to have it.
Yeah, that's the thing too, is the strange thing about books is they're losing their momentum in terms of how people consume content. I mean, podcasts are growing like crazy right now. Like I went to the National Podcast Convention in Philadelphia 2 years ago, so 2017, and then 2018's just happened 6 months ago. And the number of US citizens listening to podcasts actively in 2017 was like 8.5% of the population or something. And that actively meant like once a week. Mm-hmm. And then in 2018, 1 year later, it had tripled. It was like, wow. It tripled, right? And that medium has just been one where I've gotten detoured and sidetracked into it because we've just had so much success with our podcast that it takes a lot to write a good podcast script and release it every week and have good stories and good jokes and good data and good research and good references to back it up and good guests. It's hard. It's almost more time consuming than writing. And man, you release a book these days, and for a lot of people, they're just not consuming content that way as much anymore. But I still read every night. Like I'm a reader. So some people are reading. I'm reading every night for 30 minutes to an hour, and I love it. I just think that the market for reading it's changing.
Yeah, totally. And like Audible is such a viable option too, because you can listen like the podcast.
Yeah.
Let me ask you one more question related to your podcast, because you mentioned every week you have tens of thousands of downloads. So for those colleagues out there that are considering doing more in the area of podcasting, just briefly answer, do you feel like it's worth all that extra time that it takes? Do you feel like when you look at your business overall, I mean, I kind of know where the answer is, right? Because you keep doing it. You wouldn't if it wasn't. But to encourage those who think they might want to be seen more as an influencer and a thought leader by putting their own information out in the market, you feel like it's worth it?
Well, I don't think it's worth it for everyone. But I think each person has a unique marketing channel that probably fits their personality best. For some people, that's social media. For some people, that is video. For some people, that is blog posts. For some people, that's tweets.
Facebook Live.
Yeah. And I just think go with however you're able to build an audience and see it work, do that. Like right now, my business, like social media, I have not figured out how to make that really engaging. It's like I haven't cracked the code yet on how do I post to Instagram and make that actually be something people are interested in. We get a decent size Instagram following and Facebook following, but it doesn't result in like a lot of dialogue or communication or discussion. And we're figuring out our message there, and maybe our message doesn't relate well on social. But in podcasting, it's like, it's just natural. It's worked really well for us. Well, some people will release a podcast and find just the opposite. They'll find, I'm getting 100 downloads a week. I'm getting 50 downloads a week. It's taken me this much time. I'm not getting customers from it. I think podcasts suit themselves well to evergreen content. Okay, so I think if you have things to say that are evergreen, and I wouldn't burden yourself with the idea that you have to release an indefinite show. I like the idea of doing a season. You do a 12 episode season, and just try it. You don't have to commit to a podcast forever. You can say, hey, this is season 1 of my show, and I'm going to release 12 episodes, and there are going to be all these 12 topics, and I'm just going to see how that works. But I'm not going to commit to like going all in. You don't want to look like a failure that started and then quit, right? So that's probably why a lot of people don't do it. But you could do a podcast, limited run of episodes, and just test it with your audience. If it doesn't work, then move on to the next channel. If it works, then do another season.
So that's the idea, is to measure it. That great answer. Good idea. Thank you. So we're almost through our time here. I'm going to circle back in a second and ask you for a final thought. But let me just first thank you for being here today, and especially thank you to Dentist Advisors for supporting Jumpstart. We got to meet you last year at Jumpstart 2019. Dentist Advisors is back this year as a premier sponsor. We're super excited and really appreciate that support of dental speaker education and of our dental meetings industry in general, because our Jumpstart is really becoming more of a meeting professionals gathering. And we have such an amazing program.
I'm super excited about it.
Oh my gosh, so much. I would say 3 times the content. I mean, really not exaggerating. We were talking a little bit about that. More is coming on that agenda soon, but just wanted to say thank you for that. And to mention for those who are have not yet registered, we have now in the last week surpassed our number of registrants from last year's meeting. We're heading closer to 200, at which point we will sell out here in the next couple months. So be sure you get in and get your registration in early. You can go to jumpstart2020.com, use the early bird discount code. That's, and I actually have a little thing here to put up on the screen. Let me put that up here. So if you go to jumpstart2020.com, just use the word early bird, all caps, one word, save $300 on your registration, and that will get you in. So, Reese, is there anything that I didn't ask you that I should have? Any parting thoughts here?
No, I think we've done a great job today. I would just encourage people to get plugged into some of the ideas that we're sharing and find if they're useful in your consulting practice or in your speaking career. I would just encourage people to go to dentistadvisors.com/listen and subscribe to the podcast. You'll learn a lot from it. And if you want to join our Facebook group, we have a lot of active discussion happening there around questions that are being posed from dentists directly every day. And that's at dentistadvisors.com/group to join there. I think you'll really enjoy both of those things. And if you ever have any questions for me, if you're in a relationship and you're fighting about money, or if you're a dentist and you're trying to figure out whether it's time to build the next house or put the money back into the practice, any big decisions, you just want a second opinion, just kick them over to me via email, and I'd love to chat with you.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you. And I'm going to put your email up here, reese@dentistadvisors.com. Thanks again, Reese. This has been a whole lot of fun. I'm just
I love chatting with you.
You have so much to share with the industry. Thank you for being out there and shining your light. Thank you for sharing your tips with your colleagues too. That's a true abundant, minded person and a giving heart. So thank you so much for being here. And everyone, thanks for watching and tuning in today. And until next time, be well.